Hi, David Odell here with Odell Complete Concrete. This is part 2 of a 2-part series, and this is pour day. There's the line pump. We're going to be pumping some 3/8 minus pea gravel in here, 3,000 psi. That's about 6.5 sack of cement per cubic yard. That's how you get 3,000 on the pea gravel. We've got our dobies in there. We've got our 3/8 rebar on 2-foot centers. I have a couple angle bars on the corners on crack points. We've got a red chalk line on the wall. The nice thing about the red is you can snap it and then you can wash it down and you still have a red line there that doesn't come off like a blue line would. So you use a blue line when you want it to come off and a red line when you don't want it to come off. So here's a valley. I've got some new aluminum screeds. These are made by Craft. I've got a 12-footer and a 10-footer, and this is the first day I've used them. So right here I've just laid from a low point of the existing patio to the drain. This whole backyard floods, by the way. The side yards are solid concrete and they drain backwards, and there's no way for the water to get out of this yard. So that's why we have these drains in here now, and that's why the drains are lower than everything else in the backyard. And the drain, because we couldn't go out the front because it's solid concrete, we would have had to taken out all the concrete, so we went out the back. Fortunately for the homeowner here, they have a street on the back of their property that we could run it out. So there's your valley from the low point to this drain there. And now that guide, we just set that on top of the drain from another portion of the existing patio, and we use that as a guide to rod it down. That's a screed, that's an overhead, and then that's our rod board. And I'm really liking these. This is the first job we did with the aluminum screed, but since this job we did quite a few more with them, and they're coming in handy. It saves me time having to sort through lumber at Home Depot or Gunal or Lowe's trying to find a straight board that's light. That's never easy. Also, we have fiber mesh in this load, and I'm doing about a half a pound, anywhere between a half a pound and a pound per yard. This is what I like on this type of finish. A broom finish, you really kind of want to stay in the half-pound range per yard. That way when you run your broom over it, you're not dragging the fibers around. If you go up in over a pound, you kind of start dragging fibers, and they'll start balling up on you. Stamped concrete, on the other hand, since you're not really dragging anything on it, you can go up to 3 pounds and never even see the fiber, especially if you're throwing color hardener on it. But I do have a really good connection on the fiber mesh. If anybody wants to purchase some, I think I'm selling it for about $1.50 a pound. Something ridiculous. I mean, if you get it from the concrete plant, you're going to pay about $8 a pound. I happen to got a connection. I get it for $1.50 a pound. But that's at my storefront. There's a link on the description part, and then also through my website you can find the store. I have shirts and hats and some other little knicks in there. Here's your 4-foot magnesium bowl float with a rocker on it. When you have all these drains, it really makes it a little trickier when you're rodding to make sure that everything slopes to one certain point of a job. Much easier when you don't have drains and everything just free falls off of a large area. But in this case, everything goes to one pinpoint location. So setup is crucial. What I like to do is I have that Milwaukee Red Sit red stick, 6 foot, and I also have the 4-foot level. And they're designed for concrete, and they're they're magnesium with a level, so they act as a good screeding tool. And you can check the level at the same time. So as this concrete sets up, what I do is double check my drainage with the Milwaukee red stick to make sure that the concrete hasn't moved around through bowl floating and just settling in itself. We also took out the redwood dividers that were in the existing patio because they were completely rotted out, and we just put concrete back in there so they won't be rotting anymore. There's somewhat of a valley running right along about 2 feet out from the existing patio, which is where the drains are as well. Now that it's all laid down, you can go through it with the fiberglass funny float. Here's the fiberglass funny float. You can see the water starting to puddle around the drain already, so that's telling you that that's the low point. It's a good way to verify that it is draining towards the drain when the water starts puddling around it. And that's why when I do drains like this and everything's draining towards it, instead of taping the top of that drain off so the concrete doesn't go into it and clog your pipe when you're pouring, I just stuff it with newspaper. That way the bleed water can still drain, and it also stops the concrete. That way you don't have a big puddle of water sitting there all day long. It can just go through, absorb into the paper and drain into the pipe. We had a fair amount of bleed water. One reason for that is because we had a good subgrade, well saturated. We had a good base that was real tight, so everything came up. This is a 1/2 inch radius walking edger. It's about 10 inches wide. On your initial lay down, these make it much easier than going down on your hands and knees and going around it that way. But inevitably you'll have to go down on your knees to get it, perfect. Here's my cutter, and I like to use this on my initial cutting of the joints because it's 3 feet long, so it's easier to go straight with something like that. Once you get it started straight, it has a tendency to stay straight. The cutter is about 2.5 inches deep, which means you're bouncing off a rebar. If the rebar's in the right place, you'll feel it. But the nice thing about cutting it this deep is you're separating the aggregate. And once you've separated the aggregate, even if you were to close this, it would probably still crack in that straight line, because now the aggregate is separated, and most likely if you were to try to work it closed, you're just pushing cream in there and the aggregate is still separated. So now you can run a 1/4 inch deep, you can run a 1/2 inch deep, you can run a 3/4 deep. After this, it doesn't really matter, it's going to crack right there. Right now I'm just freehanding everything. I just look down, take a look down this tool as I'm doing this. Kind of look like looking down a scope of a rifle, looking down your sights. It's the same way you would do this. You just sight it with whatever you want. Look from one end to the other and just let it run. Since we've attached to the old patio and they're separated in sections by redwood, we're going to continue those joints right through the new slab. So if it does reflect the movement of the existing to the new, everything will be fine. Right now we're hitting it with the funny trowel, and that's basically a trowel with a pole on it. Now we're not using that deep cutter anymore, we're just using the basic walking joiner, and it's 3/4 deep, 1/2 inch radiuses on it. Once you hit it with that, you want to follow it up with either a Fresno or funny trowel and knock your lines out that joiner leaves on both sides of the joint. The funny trowel is ideal for something that has this many contours in it, because it follows the shape that you've laid out with the rod boards, the valleys. So your final phase, after you've got it as good as you can get it with your walking tools, then you got to get down on your knees and really do the detail. Now if you didn't use all those walking tools, you're going to probably get down on your knees a lot more often than you'd like to. Now as you go through here, you want to just kind of clean up your drain grates if you have them in there, and if you don't, then that's good, because then they didn't get dirty. Now we did have a little shade from that tree along that raised planter, and that was the last part to dry. Shade makes a big difference when the concrete's drying. This broom right here is 50% nylon, 50% horsehair. The nylon's just a little shorter than the horsehair. The nylon just acts as a little more strength to keep the horsehairs running straight, and that's why that's in there. Otherwise, the horsehair, if you had pure horsehair, it would have a tendency to want to lay down on you. The nice thing about a broom this size, is it's only 2 foot wide, is it'll fit in a 5-gallon bucket. Once you can do both sides in a 5-gallon bucket, and it's completely cleaned. The homeowner is gonna keep this wet today, since he's here on the job site today. And he's going to keep the water hose back there and keep misting it he'll start misting it even before I leave. Right now I just kind of show it the wetting process. He'll do that every hour for the first, well, the more you wet it, the better, because it's going to cure out slower. It's going to cure stronger and less likelihood of shrinkage cracks. So water's great. Curing compounds help also. You can still wet with curing compound. Either way it works, or both is even better. So this is the day of the pour, and we've just wet it the first time. We're still doing cleanup. You can see that we just wet it down and the water is draining beautifully. they won't have any more floods in this backyard unless the drains clog, which is not likely since there's 4 of them. Now in part 1 you can see how the drains really work underground and the prep that goes into getting to this point. We took those redwood strips out, filled them with concrete, so now that's maintenance free. Those happen to be brass grates. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned because I keep rolling them out. Have a good day. Bye.